Welcome to Alpacademics. Think about the last time you wrote something. What were some things you had to consider? Were you focusing on crafting your thesis? Were you stuck on some tricky punctuation? Perhaps you were asked to write for a particular audience, but you weren't quite sure what that means. You know what the meaning of the word audience is, but what is writing for an audience and how do you do it?
Whether it's an essay, a piece of prose, slam poetry, or a dissertation, one of the many important pieces to the writing puzzle comes from considering your audience.
Our goals for this video are: understand the expectations of your audience, understand how to change your writing based on your audience, and how to utilize audience for all types of writing. What if you want to write for a wide audience? Maybe your demographic is everyone with eyes or ears. That's great. However, you're better off narrowing your focus even further. Who does your paper apply to specifically? Maybe you want everyone to be able to read and understand your paper, but it's an issue that's of importance to specific groups like veterinarians, or young adults, or even fancy penguins. Use your narrowed focus to zero in on your audience, then expand it from there.
Maybe your teacher or professor has asked you to pick an audience, but somewhere in the instructions it's written that you're writing for a very specific demographic.
In this circumstance, it's highly advised to reach out to your teacher for clarity. Or, if it's a demographic you're comfortable aiming for, go ahead and use it.
Often, when an instructor tells us to consider our audience, it can seem like a nebulous concept, and perhaps sometimes our instructors are not doing a good job in explaining who we are writing for and why it matters. However, we are here to help. First, let's talk about discourse communities, what they are, and how understanding them will help your writing. One example of a discourse community is a group of people that are having an ongoing conversation about a subject or discipline. For example, psychologists share a discourse community, so do philosophers, mathematicians, anthropologists, advertisers, and engineers. Understanding the discourse communities around you will give you an idea of how to gauge your audience and what you might need to write to impress them. Now let's say that you're writing about the declining fish stock market to a discourse community of fancy penguins. Let's also assume that these fancy penguins are economists, and they have a vested interest in the fish market being stable. What business does an alpaca have telling fancy penguins about the fish stock market? For these penguins, this is going to be a huge barrier to entry, and the only way to overcome this barrier is to build a rapport with your audience and build an understanding about their needs.
These fancy penguins will probably want a few things: evidence for how and why the fish market is declining, statistics of the decline, very fancy language to connect with your bougie bird business bureaucrats, and finally, why they should care, or more specifically, your call to action.
You gotta get these frugal feathered fowls ruffled for a solution. However, if you're not writing to a hypothetical audience and your paper is grounded in reality, then you might be thinking, I don't care about birds. I'm trying to write a paper to my composition professor. He doesn't care about birds. Who cares about birds? It's okay, because these same tactics apply.
If you're writing for your composition professor, they'll expect you to use academic language and to format your paper correctly. You may have also been provided with a set of guidelines for your paper that will indicate the tone or structure. You can even have a one-on-one conversation with your teacher to get a sense of what is expected of you. On that note, do not ever be afraid to talk with your instructor. They're the one who assigned the paper, so reach out if you have questions. This is an invaluable skill to have no matter your grade level, or even your occupation. If it seems like your instructor can't help, talk to your classmates. You may be surprised to find they're also in a similar position.
On a bigger scale, perhaps your paper is about a topic that a certain group may not have an extended understanding of. Let's say your audience is college students and your topic is recyclable materials. Many college students may know it's good or important to recycle, but they do not know that you can't recycle things like plastic grocery bags or cigarette butts.
You can start by researching your audience. According to surveys or statistics, what do college students know about recycling? What do they know about recycling specific materials? What do college students have to say about the state of recycling?
Don't forget to research wisely. You can try Google Scholar or an online database, or nonprofit websites ending in .gov or .org. Finding and using factual, non-biased sources is a whole other topic for a future video, so stay tuned.
Using this information, you can consider your tone. If your demographic is enthusiastic about the subject, then you can use their enthusiasm to draw their attention to the issue at hand. If your demographic seems apathetic to the issue, you need to find a way to get them to care. One way to do this is to provide counter-arguments. Listen to conversations about the issue at hand. Try anticipating people's objections and then frame that part of your conversation around why the objections don't stand to scrutiny. Then, use that research to your advantage as proof to your claims.
Let's review what we've discussed so far.
Remember to gauge your audience. Decide if you're writing to one person or a group of people, but try not to write to just everybody.
Try to imagine that you are joining a conversation and not just writing a paper.
Remember your readers will have expectations about your topic and genre.
These are both important because it helps the reader get a sense of a bigger picture, and it also makes your paper more relevant and interesting.
If all else fails and you need more help beyond your instructor and fellow students, go to your local writing center.
Writing centers are there to assist with all genres and all types of writing, so don't be afraid to reach out to them. In many cases, your tuition is paying for their services too, so don't be afraid to take advantage of them.
Good luck, students!